you, Planning Commissioners, for joining us for this work session on November 28th. If we could go ahead and start with a word of prayer, would you be willing? Trent, would you be willing to do that? I appreciate that.
Not until the actual meeting. This is just a work session.
Can I hit it, Audrey? Okay, so at least, according to me, but obviously there are lots of different reasons for doing this, but to me the primary driver for doing this, to answer your question about intent, would be just the social fabric of Highland. Like, I feel sad in our neighborhood where we've got all these awesome families that have lived here for 40, 50 years, and they're on 5 acres or 10 acres or 2 acres or 1 acre. And as they get a little older, they're just not in a position to maintain it. And so they pack up and leave. And all of their best friends seem to be in the surrounding neighborhood. And it just seems sad to me that we don't really have a thing that would answer that question. So that's kind of the method for the madness. I promise you this wasn't done because I was thinking, how can we game the state ADU things? Now, if we happen to answer both of those at the same time, jolly good show.
And I like this particularly because it addresses the populations that are getting older and the younger populations where nobody can afford housing, and they're able to rent to their families or members that can help look after. It kind of is a 2-for-1 special on that one.
Yeah. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm just going to zoom through some of the things, and then Audrey's got also another document that would be helpful, and I think the two of them should cover most things. I don't actually have a strong opinion about any of this stuff other than let's come up with something that's practical. So the concept would be that it's a totally separate or detached dwelling unit of some sort. Our current code mandates that there's this funny, very peculiar joined breezeway that somehow makes it different than just a normal addition, but it basically is, as presently written, it's just an addition. So the idea would be it could be totally separate, number one. Number two, there's no combined utilities, so you'd use the existing infrastructure, whatever that is. And then size-wise, I mean, I'm completely impartial, whether it's 700 square feet or 1,000 square feet or 802.1, I don't really care that much, but something that's reasonably small from a footprint point of view. And then if there are existing structures or other additional structures, such as a additional barn or extra garage or something like that, whatever we decide as a group is the size of the ADU. So just for argument's sake, let's say we say it's 1,000 square feet, but welcome Claude, by the way. If Claude or Trent or Jerry's got a 20,000 square foot barn, he can have an ADU inside there as long as it's no larger than 1,000 square feet, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then one of the dwellings must be owner occupied, whether it's that main house or the ADU. A limit of at least one, a maximum of one ADU per lot. So you can't have 3 or 4 of these little things. And then start with R140 and above only. And then if we need to adjust that later, we can do it later on. All other city codes would apply, whether that's, vacation rentals, noise, parking, architectural standards, setbacks, etc., with the following exceptions. They must have off-street minimum parking requirements. They must have some sort of dedicated parking. And if it's a 1 acre lot, there really should be enough space to do that. And whether we decide it's 1 or 2 cars, I'm impartial. And then Andy Spencer, and I'm not throwing him under the bus, but he had some brilliant ideas. He said, because we don't really have citywide architectural standards, maybe we should put in language along the lines of something to be complementary to the existing home, whatever that is. But don't really have a pink, Barbie house next to a, mountain home. Some sort of garish, uncomplimentary thing. And then he also suggested our current setbacks are 10 foot, but because it's a dwelling unit, make the setback 20 feet for the ADU and ADU only. And then our current height is 35 foot, but limit the ADU to 25 feet or whatever height we think is.
What happens with that if it's on a garage and it's the above and the garage can be 10 feet? Then you can't have it?
No, if it's an existing building, you just have to.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of these turn into like, garages that are, they've built an apartment on top and things like that, and that's already within that. I don't know that we can do the 20 feet.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm very impartial about these. It just seemed like some good suggestions from Andy. And then number 8, can the person subdivide or sell off the ADU separate from the main house? Definitely not. So it's not a, like a flagship lot or anything. This is just one lot, and it's got 2 dwelling units on it. And then there was an interest from the city to have some sort of impact fees for these ADUs. Water, sewer, I have no idea. I really didn't do.
Do you guys have any?
Are you asking the dollar amount?
Yes.
It depends. Some of those depend on the size and things like that. Give me a minute, and I could give you a rough guesstimate as to what that is.
So my only pushback on that is, if I have an apartment that I've created into a basement apartment, then you would need to require they pay a fee. If you do an attached ADU, if you're saying that only the ADU gets the fee, then people are going to attach the ADU to avoid the fee. And so if we're trying to encourage the ADU detached, I don't think I would, because it's no different than the apartment, or if I built an addition onto the house that's attached and use that as a rental. I don't see why being detached would,
I agree,
say an additional fee. So I would say no to that.
Well, that's with my limited experience. The initial fees are for tying in and adding. You've already done that. And the fact that we're saying you can't have separate meters, to me, that wipes that out. If you had separate meters, then I would say there would be an attached fee with it.
Great feedback.
Okay, I did have a question on, so number 3, the one thing that I was a little bit concerned about was The nature of the lots that we have, big, deep lots, some of them, some of them are acre to 5 acres. And the structure of the lot is way back, and people might want to put that ADU way back there, which causes a problem with emergency vehicles getting back there, perhaps. With the way that, they do have to have off-street parking, but it's almost creating a flag unit, a flag lot, is what I'm saying. And so I'm curious what you guys think about that, because it needs to be able to be accessible for those things. If they do have a 5-acre lot or a whatever.
So it's my limited experience, again, looking into some of this stuff. Police or fire will never leave the main road. They have hoses long enough to get to any of the depths of these lots, because, again, I may be wrong, but they're not going to bind their equipment up or even risk running in the backyard. They'll never leave the front. So I don't think that would be an issue. I get what you're saying, though. It
So
could
should
be a
there be a
concern.
requirement that it can't be, like if you have a 5-acre lot and it's in the back of your 5-acre lot, they can't
But-
get to it, can they?
But Audrey, the same problem occurs today, where in theory there's a 10-foot setback. So we live on 5.5 acres. I suppose in theory we could build a barn or something way in the back. But I'm not really sure that
Okay, I was just
that
curious
just.
about that.
I personally am not troubled about it if I build in something in a place that's inaccessible. Then I'm being a bit silly. Yeah. Well, don't burn down the trees.
Well, I think
Or the people in it.
I think the bigger problem is if you put an elderly person. So I have an ADU at my house, and my father-in-law died in it recently. And his first attack, they had a hard time getting him out of there because I didn't have a wide enough walkway or pathway. It was close to the road, but they ended up just picking him up and carrying him over to the driveway instead, because the gurney couldn't get where it needed to get. So I think there does need to be like a 3-foot, 4-foot walking. If you put it way back there, there needs to be something so that if there is a senior back there, because we're talking about kind of these granny flats, they need to be able to get their gurney back there and be able to wheel the person forward. So that would be the only thing I would guess. But like he said, 5 acre, you can put the house back there, and fire, all of our equipment is designed, supposed to be designed to accommodate the entire lot from the street. So what's that? Well, so we had a fire, and they have an off-road truck that had to go over a makeshift bridge, got over there and put out the fire. I don't know if you remember the trailer that caught on fire. Yeah, they got up and over and drove. They have an off-road, pretty serious piece of equipment that goes back there and sprays this stuff that expands into the wood and all that. So, because Bull River, we have lots of areas, but they get back to them as long as we provide a little bit of a dirt road to get there. So.
I have a kind of the same issue. Mine's with number 7, having one off-road parking. I don't know anybody who has just one car, any family or any couple or anything that has one car. And as it is with, we need to be off-road for plowing, we need to be off-road for all kinds of stuff. I have issues with one off-road parking space.
Yeah. Well, what's your
Just if you're gonna
suggestion?
rent if you're renting
2, 12, 7, 43? No, I'm being facetious.
Well, wide enough for 2. I don't know. I'm thinking what are the chances that you're going to have one person in this dwelling? If it's a college kids, they've got roommates. If it's a couple, an old couple, if it's one senior, maybe. But that seems to me the least of our.
We have several in our neighborhood, and there is just one single guy living there, working, professional, and
In
that's
his
all they
house
need.
or in
It's in a house.
and rental behind.
In a
yeah.
house.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
main
would keep
house,
the
that's-
same rules that we have for a basement apartment or an attached ADU. So the only thing we're changing here is everything we're asking for can already be done attached, except it can be 2,000 square feet, whatever you want it to be. All we're doing is detaching it,
Unattach it.
and the only difference is we're saying you can only be, if you're detached, it can only be 1,000 square feet. But everything else would be exactly the same for an apartment or an attached
So do we have
Dwelling?
one parking space now? Is that how it is off-road for like our
Yes.
Mother-in-law apartments?
Yeah, it's one.
Yeah, because if you guys come to my street, there's just cars parked all the way down the street all the time. Well,
Yeah, I think if you change that, like if you do go to 2, then you have to go to 2 for the apartment.
oh
and
yeah,
the
oh yeah,
attached.
yeah, no, yeah, I didn't even know
But,
what.
but I think we're pretty much saying the only difference is we're detaching it. And the only new rule when it's detached is it
Yeah.
can only be 1,000 square feet.
Right. and
Or,
that's
or
cool. That's-
800,
well,
whatever. we're
Yeah,
saying.
that's great. Small. Yeah,
So-
and the other thing, I'm sorry, just right along with that,
Yeah.
I really think that the unattached home should be accessible by if it's an off-road fire truck or if it's an ambulance or something like that. I think I just can't. I don't think putting something 5 acres back, and especially if there's trees around it and all that, I think that we need to have it accessible. Even like if we have one of those off-road fire trucks with the big hoses, that's great. You know, but it has to be accessible. I don't think a small little path is enough.
Are
Well,
you
ma-
saying that it needs to be where you can roll something up to it? A gurney?
Well, you could put the
uh,
fire out, whatever
I'm
it
talking
takes.
about EMT. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no.
Well,
Yeah, I
there's
guess if you have
no
to.
point to do anything if you leave it where it looks like you can get to them, but you can't. I'm just thinking, if we're going to go that way, we would need to say something along the lines of some emergency piece of equipment can roll up to the front door or whatever.
Well, that's fine for, an ambulance or a gurney. I mean, I hate to be living in the apartment if they have to roll the gurney 5 acres back, but that's for
Yeah,
me.
I probably inflamed the issue unnecessarily. There's some practical things here. If you're using the existing utilities,
Uh-huh.
you have to have the appropriate slope to access the sewer and all that stuff. And so, from a practical point of view, you're probably not going to put it, 1,000 feet away or a couple of 100 feet
Yeah.
away. You just practically can't do that from a slope point of view. But I mean, so I don't want to suggest that I'm not concerned about the safety and people's welfare and all that, but
I just brought it up because in Pleasant Grove, they have lots of flag units. Flag lots. I keep saying it the wrong
Yeah.
thing. Flag lots. And a lot of the problem was that the emergency people were having such issues trying to get in and get out because it's a whole nother residence. And that was one of the reasons I thought years ago when I had started this, we were like, yeah, we're definitely not doing flag lots. But then we're kind of creating it, the same scenario. So we just need to make sure that I would think we'd need to make sure that there was some kind of road access back. So that was all
Yeah.
my thoughts.
no,
So
that's
I just
wise.
wanted to back up just a little bit and clarify what is our goal for tonight? Are we proposing this is the concept and we'd like to propose it to the council? Do you want us to move forward? And then it comes back to us to do some workshops to figure out all these ins and the outs? Or are you proposing we get the final thing done to submit to council?
So, at least for me personally, I would like to have a proposal, as it's written on there, to come to Planning Commission next month. And then at Planning Commission, we'll hopefully get some citizen input. We'll, reject it or modify it or adjust it or whatever we feel like we need to do. And then at some point we would, if it gets approved, we would send it to City Council. And then the normal process, they would go through that, going, oh no, we hate this, change this, modify that, or just, hey, time out, let's wait a few months and see what the state legislature decides, or whatever whatever happens at City Council.
That was kind of my question because to Jerry's point, it's already done. All we need to do is change, I think it was number 2, to allow accessory buildings and then decide the size. Outside of that, we need some time to do some research to come up with a definitive plan. But if that's enough, then I think that's great, and that's what we can do tonight.
And I thought
Yeah.
that's what we had all been doing and that we were coming tonight to actually go through this outline, fill in, kind of also
Okay.
we're more concrete on what we're actually presenting, because we're never really in a work session where we get to listen to each other, because we've got an planning commission agenda that we're trying to get through. So that was what I-
Okay, no, that's great. There wasn't a lot of response on the emails after Chris started, and then I did a little bit more, and so that's what I was wondering, because if we're going down to the nuts and the bolts of the thing, then we've got a lot to discuss.
Yeah, I have
Aaron,
I'm debating because this is really interesting. And I'm glad that you guys are finally having a meeting to be able to talk about all this. Part of me wonders if this makes sense to do a joint work session with city council on, Chris, I think you might have suggested that, and the timing just wasn't right. But at the same time, I want the planning commission to be independent of the city council. You are an independent body, and I don't want you to just produce what the city council tells you. However, this is would be a significant change for our city. And I know that the council is going to have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm anticipating, at least. So the mayor wasn't able to be here tonight. I think he is listening remotely. Honestly, Audrey, it might be a good idea for you and he to have a conversation to see what he thinks might be a good next steps forward. We could move towards what Chris is suggesting, but I think it'd be good to have a conversation with him to kind of solidify that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I was going to say, I think there is more to it than just, what's just, because it's unattached, and it's not necessarily, you can use the same driveway for an attached house. You can use the same driveway for a lot of things, but with an unattached, it could be half acre away or longer. I think there's other issues.
Yeah, I have one, and there really isn't a big difference.
Yeah, but
We
that's
use
yours.
the same driveway. There's a separate parking
Right.
slot. It's 1,000 square feet, which is just enough
And that's
to
yours.
have
and-
somebody stay there.
And that, if everybody does it that way, I'd be perfectly happy. But that's not how life is.
Well, I would make a list of what you think is different, because I think you're going to find that not a lot. We're not going to have separate driveways, because then it starts to look like
Another,
yeah, you got a whole nother dwelling. But
Yeah.
as long as they meet those requirements, I think if you feel there's a lot more to it, I would just look at the existing, get it all, what has to be,
Yeah,
and make
well,
a
I
list of what you think is going to be different, and then we
okay.
can discuss those. I just don't think you'll find.
I-
I've
yeah.
done these in multiple cities, and it's really not that different.
It's great if they have the same driveway. There's no issue. But I don't know, they may not have a driveway. They could park out front. And
Some
not
of them have a
driveway.
side driveway that goes to their back
Yeah.
shop or their
And that's
whatever,
great if they
so.
have that.
And-
But that's not a requirement, so I don't want, I'm just looking at people who aren't as thoughtful.
Is there a requirement to have a driveway in an existing house right now? Do we lay that out in city building code?
The driveway.
Yeah, to have a driveway.
Not specifically, but you require a garage
Yes.
and you require off-street parking, and we also say you can't park on a lawn. So kind of all of them together
That's,
mean put a driveway in.
that's what I'm kind of hinting to is I think these things flush themselves out either financially or logically. And we start down a rabbit hole of regulating everything. I think that's a little bit much, but I do, and then I think of the white structure down in the other end of town and think, yeah, somebody did take it to the extreme, and it does happen.
Where?
But that white barn that's attached by, or I'm not sure what it is, but anyways.
Pickleball thing.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
giant
It-
pickleball arena. with
Extremes happen, but anyways, so to me, I think we've covered detached size. I'd like to have a discussion on size. Outside of that, I'm not sure what else is not already covered in the list.
I think when you detach it, it should become part of your total outbuilding. You know, how you can do a percentage.
Yeah.
If it's attached, it's not part of that. But I think if you would detach it, it should be part of your total outbuilding square footage allowance.
And I think under existing code, that is exactly what would be. Yeah.
And I did browse a bunch of different cities and states' requirements. And I think one of the things we should adopt, and we've talked about it with other things too, is have pictures showing the different options that are that we are okay with and what can constitute an ADU. Like, I've looked at a few of them and I've printed off a couple where they show the different ways that they're able to have it, and they pretty much have this ADU page on their city site that explains exactly what they can do, not just in verbiage, but in a picture. And then the other thing I was just going to ask, if you guys are okay with manufactured homes as ADUs. I've seen that on other sites.
Well, that doesn't fit our existing building code, so no.
I think it also doesn't go along with the building should look like the main house.
If they make it the same color.
No, I would say no to that. But the other thing you can do if we're concerned about the safety part, I have been in municipalities where a detached ADU has to be within 25 or 30 feet of the existing home. And then that starts to limit
Problem.
what you guys were talking about, having a livable all the way in the back somewhere. That's kind of weird. Any rate, I have been in municipalities where it's like 25, 30, it just depends on who it is. And then that kind of keeps it closer and not look so much like a, faraway house. And then that'll solve the emergency access.
Mm-hmm.
If they can access the home, then 20 feet away, they should be able to access the ADU or because I'm thinking on the one that I have, it's within that 30, 50 feet. Like it looks part of our house, but it is separated.
And I don't think it has to be right there, all conjoined, because if people have an established backyard and they want a little distance.
Yeah.
But I think if you've got a 5-acre property, that changes things as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So.
And if you're the original residents who is just trying to stay on the property and then rent the house out to your kids who have a big family, you're going to want a little more distance, privacy. I mean, it is nice to not be attached and lock the door and the grandkids can't come in, that kind of stuff.
Well, I like what you're saying there, Jerry, a distance. I'm not sure what it would be, because I'm thinking of the example that I would like to build, and the size of vehicles, I would need more than 25 feet to pull a car in there and turn it around safely and exit if it was behind my house. But is that 50 or 75 feet, something like that? Yeah, that makes sense.
I could just wheel that in a little bit. Maybe it's 100 feet
Yeah.
or
Something.
Was there anything else on that outline that, some places talked about number of bedrooms. We don't have to get that specific.
Yeah, I don't really
But
care
it did
about
talk
that.
about a fully functional kitchen bathroom instead of like a hot plate and a sink.
Mhm.
So, because some people are doing these tiny home
Hmm.
little shed things,
do we care? I mean,
and I'm
I
just
don't.
curious what your thoughts are. Sorry, bring it up. An ADU, in definition, on the state website has a functioning kitchen and bathroom.
but what's functioning? Is a hot plate functioning?
Audrey, is your mic on?
No. The kids never say I talk soft, so sorry about that. Okay, so
So that means they're wired in, and the plumbing's in, and the sewer's in.
the plumbing is in. It has a
Electricity.
functioning bathroom, functioning kitchen.
What I'll say is when we do building code, because currently we don't allow these, when people go to build detached structures that appear to have the look of an ADU, what we'll often tell them is we first have them sign something that says we're not going to have anyone live in there. The second one is when the inspectors go out, they look for a 220 connection, which is what a range and oven can work off of. Basically, if they build a kitchen-like thing, but that's not in there, we assume they're not making that a permanent kitchen.
So not to cloud the issue, but we currently cannot build a garage like my shop doesn't have a bathroom in it because they won't let me put a bathroom in it because I could convert it. Are we going to allow
Yeah, really.
people to build shops or studios with a bathroom in it? I guess as long as they wire it for the 220 and don't put the kitchen in and then just have the bathroom. But I know the reasoning for not allowing bathrooms in shops was because And I don't agree with, call it managing, but of what somebody might do. I had an inspector on a double wide sliding glass door. I put a 3x3 landing outside the operating door. He said, you need to do it the whole width. Well, these people are going to rip that out and put a pavement. I said, well, that's fixed. He goes, well, they could switch the doors around. I said, well, they could also cut that window out and put a door there. Should I put a pad there and a pad there? Everywhere there's a window, should I put a pad for what they might do? And so I've never been a proponent of writing codes or enforcing what they might do, or because they're going to do what they're going to do anyways. You know, there's bedrooms in homes that don't have windows because they converted the theater into a bedroom. You can't. So I'm just curious where that would play a role if we.
If it counts as an ADU, it has to have a functioning bathroom and a kitchen.
Right.
Well,
If it's not that, you know, because then some person's stuck in there going, what? You know, if someone's just renting to somebody and they don't exactly know what they have. I don't know. I just think if it's an ADU, it has that. That's me.
So would you allow a shop to have just a bathroom in it?
Just the bathroom? Not if it has if you're turning it into a studio
No, not
apartment
turning-
or something in it.
Just a shop. So I have a shop, and I have to walk all the way down to the guest house to use the bathroom because they wouldn't let me put a bathroom in my shop.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all, but
Okay.
I'm not in
I was
charge.
just curious.
Yeah, me
so
either.
I was
think
just
about
curious
it.
if the occupancy permit would cover what we're just talking about here. It's been a while since I've done one, but I can't move into my house until I have X, Y, and Z. So I would assume we would have the same requirements with an ADU.
Yeah.
And my experience when I tried to get a bathroom in my shop was they said I would pour my oil down the drain, therefore they wouldn't let me have one. And that was the only reason why Lehigh City wouldn't let me have a drain in my garage. So people will do the strangest things and no regulation's going to stop them. But obviously any kind of encouragement we can put in there that will discourage people from doing crazy things is always good. But again, you can't regulate that.
Yeah, so if I could just reverse a little bit to address what Aaron had brought up. Here's how I've only lived here for 29 years, so I don't have a ton of history. But here's what typically happens. One resident will come in that 3-minute session and they'll be sad about something. And then mayor and council will instruct staff to go and fix the daycare thing or change this. And in the next month, we get that proposal, and then council approves it or modifies it or rejects it or whatever. So in that same spirit of, I'm not suggesting that this is the panacea for world hunger here. I just think that if there is something that we are all collectively interested in, that we have a responsibility to make a proposal as best as we can, and then to provide it to City Council. Now, we don't have the same expertise and wisdom as city staff have, but I've just seen too many ideas like the zero-scaping thing. We've been talking about that for 15 years. Nobody did anything. And we as a planning commission last year just said, fine, 2 months, done deal. And City Council looked at it and said, well, we don't like this gorse bush and change this fluffy, feather tree or whatever it is. But we now have a zero-scaping. And so I'm not suggesting that we are brilliant. I'm just saying that we have an opportunity, if we fancy, to advocate and advance things. If we don't, the alternative is we're going to wait for another 10 or 20 years and we won't be able to do it and you won't get your ADU. So I'm more a fan of put something together that is thoughtful, provided to staff and City Council, and they might say, this is rubbish, terrible idea. That's okay, doesn't matter, but at least we've tried, rather than to go, we need to study this and carefully think about this, and then, in 20 years we'll have an ADU proposal. So I'm not trying to be cheeky by saying that, but
No.
but let's just kind of go through these things, if it's possible, in the next 20 minutes, and just say, what are your best thoughts as far as answers go, knowing that it's going to be suboptimal, but it's at least our best step forward. And then Audrey's got a bunch of really good things that
Well,
we
there
all
were
should-
just other,
yeah,
not knowing
commingled.
what was going to be on this. I had grabbed all this, and they were ones that other cities had mentioned that I thought might impact. One question I do have is the size requirement. And you had said just R140 is the first that's allowed. But if we want to talk about different lot size and what percentage, we keep throwing that out there, but no one knows how to narrow that down to what size lot is allowed, what size ADU, like, kind of thing. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Are you talking about the size of the ADU, or on what lot
You have
is
said
this
that
permitted?
1,000, you've shot, I mean, you put out the 1,000 square feet. So I'm just curious on the lot size where we have like a quarter acre, or quarter acre, third of an acre, half acre, what we're allowing first.
Yeah, so and this is purely Chris, so I'm one out of 25,000 people. My opinion is it's on R140 only, period. And I'm really...
Unless it's already grandfathered in because it's already there?
No, it
Well,
shouldn't
those
be
are
there.
separate. Those are just there.
Okay.
You can't go back and
Okay.
tear things, but
And
So you're referring to a detached ADU only on I-140?
Yeah.
R-140, is that what you're saying?
yeah, so for detached, and in my humble opinion, the current sort of higgledy-piggledy, strange breezeway language that we have, it's basically a glorified addition to the home that you sort of legitimize by putting in the breezeway. So at least to me, I don't think that breezeway language makes any sense if you are going to do a detached ADU. I would rather just say, man, if just make a monster, 20,000 square foot house if that's what you want, or have your 4,000 square foot house and 1,000 square foot detached. But that's just my,
I'll
one
also,
person.
yeah, towards the R140. When you put an ADU on an R140 compared to a half acre lot or a quarter acre lot, it doesn't look as high density. Like, we kind of want to keep the low density feel of Highland. I think when you start putting ADUs on smaller and smaller lots, it starts to look really high density type housing. And so I would support keeping it to the R140, and then if we feel we need more down the road, they can change the code to go to half acre lots, maybe. But
Maybe one point of clarification, Planning Commission. So R140, a minimum lot, it can be a 20,000 square foot lot.
Correct.
So I'm wondering do you really mean R140 or do you mean like 40,000 square foot lots?
yeah, I guess we could clarify that to be 1 acre lot. 1 acre lot.
So I will say the numbers work out quite nicely if you have the 5%. So accessory dwelling or detached structures can be 5% of a lot. If you have a 20,000 square foot lot, that's exactly 1,000 square feet, which would be if you're going to count your detached ADU as part of that, that would be your only detached structure is that. Or it's a smaller one and you have a little shed off to the side. Then you'd have up to 2,000 for a 40,000 square foot lot.
And that's what I was wondering, if that's covered under what's allowable, and if we keep that standard, then, and only in the R140, which I would agree with, if that goes down to 20,000 square feet. And that comes to my second question that's been referred to, Thane did, is where do we get the 1,000 square feet, or would it be the 5% if it's a bigger, or is the 1,000, is that arbitrary, or is there something behind that?
That's purely an arbitrary, whether it's, like Jerry was saying, he's done a lot of them where they 750 square feet, or I personally am completely impartial. This is literally spaghetti on the wall. I don't have any emotional attachment to any of this stuff.
So I'm liking kind of what he just said. So if you did make it part of your outbuilding requirement, so 1,000 would be the max. Like, we're not saying it has to be 1,000. So somebody on a smaller lot who has a 400 square foot shed and his maximum outbuilding is 1,000, he could still go build a 600 square foot ADU. Like like we currently, in my business, we currently have 350, 450, 650, and 1,000. And because the smaller ones that are the 450 is a studio, which still works great for an in-law, a mother-in-law's quarter that is getting older. Like my father-in-law who lived with us only lived in the downstairs, which was 500 square feet, and everything he needed was right on the same level. And then the upstairs was a guest room. So I kind of like this idea of
Percentage.
well, it's part of your outbuilding requirement. If you have 30 square feet left of an outbuilding requirement, you could do a 30 square foot. You know, I'm just saying, it's you could make your outbuilding portion a livable portion up to your limit based on your lot size. Because he could go put a big old ugly
On
shed.
your lot size.
Up to the limit of the outbuilding or up to the limit of the 1,000 square feet? Would that
Up to
still
the
be
limit
allowed?
of your lot size.
Well,
Well,
that's what I was wondering. Which way are you?
Yeah.
Well, both. The max, like my outbuilding requirement's way over 1,000 square feet, but the outbuilding can only be at that because you don't want it to be another home on the property. You want it to be what it is, auxiliary dwelling unit. And so 1,000 would be the cap, and then you can still go build your other outbuildings. As the lots get smaller,
Right.
you pretty much can only do the outbuilding or do your shop or whatever it is you're going to studio they call them now. So I kind of like that. That kind of makes it fair, I think, across the board to everybody in Highland instead of just the people that are in R140 or just the people that have 1 acre lots. Because there could be some 400 square foot ADUs.
So you're suggesting you'd expand beyond R140? Is that what you're saying? As long as you meet the percentage?
I would go with the
requirement?
percentage
Me too.
and then the max to be 1,000. So people with 2 acre lots, they're not going to build a 2,000 square foot ADU. It has to stay at, that's the cap. But as the lot gets smaller, your options get more limited depending on what you build.
I hear that.
Which also is more useful because there are so many that already have them. They can say, how come I can't do that? Because my neighbors have it. And some people just have the lots and have a futuristic idea of, I'd like to build this in the future and still need to have that option. But they're surrounded by other people who already have it. So I do have one house on my street, which you guys might know, Spence Clegg. He's had to comply with these attached rules and has dug out his basement on a side lot that he owns, dug out his basement, built this breezeway onto an entirely other house with a garage underneath with an apartment all on top, and it looks like a whole nother home.
It's horrible looking too.
But it's what they had to do to
Well,
meet
it's also
with the
attached.
current
Yeah, to meet the
codes.
code.
It's attached.
So, but it looks like two houses looking identical standing next to each other. And that's because they were trying to meet code that we have currently.
But this is exactly what I see can be happening. Like I said, not everybody has 5 acres that they're going to put a house on. And this is why I'm concerned about, well, the height. I like the height thing because, you've got all these blocking other people's views as it is of the sun, let alone the mountains. But I can just really see this getting out of control unless we have some pretty tight parameters on height and access to medical or whatever, and just certain things that need to be done in a home, that you'd have to have. If you've got somebody living back there.
If that same example that you were talking about, if he went to our ADU requirement, he couldn't build that house, that bigger, because he would get stuck to 1,000. So he would still put the attached thing on there to get what he did, to get the mass, the size. Whether we pass this or not, he would still do that because he couldn't go beyond the 1,000 square feet. He wanted something bigger. They're good friends of mine. I'm just saying he would have to do that. Yeah.
And he's like, we have to dig out our basement and have this whole thing, and they spent all this money building this breezeway to just put this on there.
But if we pass this, he wouldn't have been able. If he had not attached it, he wouldn't have been able to build what he built. It would have to stay.
It was a garage.
The livable part, regardless of it could be a 4-car garage with 1,000 square feet on top. That's all he could do if it's detached. That garage gets attached, it could be 2,000 square feet on top.
So as a
In our current code, they can do that.
As a clarification, if we did a 1,000 square foot limit, if somebody already has something that is over 1,000 square feet and they want to convert it to an ADU, how do we deal with that?
Are you saying that it's already livable and already being used as an ADU?
No, I'm saying they have a garage that they want to
Yeah.
then add a kitchen, add a bedroom, add a bathroom to.
They could only convert 1,000 square foot of that garage. The rest would have to stay garage or be storage.
Oh.
And that's assuming that it's a detached garage sitting.
Mm-hmm. A detached something.
Yeah,
right.
detached something. Let's say it's a shop. They could only convert, because here's what happens if you don't restrict them to the 1,000. I'm just like this guy with the breezeway. I'm going to go build a 2,000 square foot garage, and then a year later convert it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what's
So you
gonna
can't
happen.
set it up to where that's what people are going to. If you want to convert something, into an ADU, you have to make it an ADU. Now they can make, let's say it's 1,500 square foot garage.
Mhm.
They can go 1,000 square foot and then just make the other part storage, or unconditioned space, is what they would have to do.
Do you think that they would do you think that people really would not eventually use that as living space?
They will 100% use it, but that's not what we're here to. If they want to break the law, they're going to break the law.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
So-
grow pot in your house, you're going to grow pot in your house.
But
I can't make codes where you can't get a humidifier in your home because you're going to someday do that. So we just have to, at the time of C of O, it has to meet the requirement. That has to not have a conditioned space to it. It has to be a certain way for us to give a C of O. Now, if there's a fire or something happens, they're in a world of hurt if they're
Absolutely.
not to code, right? I mean, they could get sued. There's a lot of stuff that happens. What?
What's your-
Certificate of occupancy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Appreciate it.
Do you?
So
I guess
I
my
wanted
question
to-
is on the 1,000 square feet. Is a 1,500 square foot detached ADU, like it's a whole different house? Is that much different than a 1,500 square foot detached garage? Does that change the feel of the neighborhood to you? Because if it doesn't, then I'm not sure I understand the reason for limiting it to 1,000 square feet.
Well, it does discourage from building a new 1,500 square foot or whatever if we have a law, code that people, it's going to be, like you said, the ones who are built already, it's not going to change anything. They're going to make it so it doesn't look like it because they don't want to get caught, and all that. So, but it's going to help discourage, it's against the code, to do a new one. So kind of it's not going to change what is there, but it will keep people, I think, from.
But also, to your question, 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet versus 1,000. A big family is going to move into a 2,000 square foot or 1,500 square foot dwelling versus somebody, if you want to cram 8 people into 1,000 square feet, great. But you can cram 10 people in a 2,000 square. So you're really trying to limit. I mean, I guess they could make their dwelling bigger, but a family isn't going to move in with another family as much as a full-on family is going to live here. Now you're creating just 2 residences, basically.
So you're kind of encouraging smaller people or smaller numbers of people. So that was kind of where my question was going to go. And here's the example. If I can build a 3,000 square foot shop in my backyard next to the back fence, it's 100 feet from my house, and I can only put 1,000 foot in there, why would that matter? Because the structure's there, it takes up the space, it will look zero difference whether I have 1,000 or I have 3,000 in there. So that's the first question. And then the second one is, if I can build 1,000 foot of square footage living space, how much can I have? So we don't count the garage on a house as space, but we want to have space for a car or parking with the AED. So would that eat into the 1,000 foot of space if you wanted to add a garage or
No,
a
so
car park?
if you build an ADU on top of a 2-car garage, let's say that 2-car garage is for the ADU, that is not, it's livable square footage. Your 3,000 square foot barn, if you made that livable, you could pack that with people.
Absolutely, you
And
could
that's-
make a hotel.
And that's why you would keep it to the 1,000. And the municipality you're talking about that said limit to 2 bedrooms, that also limits, like if you say this could only be a 1-bedroom ADU, that would really limit a family moving in there that then has 2 bedrooms to put kids in, you know, like a whole, the intent of an ADU it's to house a retiring couple that lived in the main house. It's to house a college student who is going to UVU for a while. I've done that.
And in Highland, it will be your kid's starter family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or between houses, because that's what everyone is
Yeah,
doing.
and that's, yeah, those are the two, really, that's who you see, right? You see the elderly, and you see the young family, poor kids that are, get married and they're still going to school, and it's $2,000 in Lehigh. Right.
But see, but
Well,
that's
and
good.
in that
You don't need
scenario,
more than
in that
two bedrooms.
scenario, you might move a family into the ADU, but who's living in the main house? The two adults.
Correct.
So either way, you're not having a full-blown 8 family member person and a 6. You're hoping, because the owner occupancy also. No, the owner occupancy portion is the other reason that you can't rent both out, so you don't get 2 families.
Right.
So the idea is that the senior couple that owns the big house will probably move into one or the other and then rent to family people, college students, newly married couples. That's really what I think the intent, and it's been shown to work. I mean, you don't. There are the offsetter where there's 10 people that move into a 1,000 square foot ADU. That's kind of the exception. What's really going to happen is these scenarios we all just talked about.
And that's really where I'm struggling, is back to Chris's original point. I want to do this for myself, and I don't think 1,000 feet's enough for me to move into the guest house, because I want to get rid of the big house and let somebody take care of it. 1,200, 15, I don't think anything bigger than 15. So I would like to push that up a little bit just as a recommendation, but also in respect of time, I really do want to do what you suggested, Chris. I want to pass something up to either be kicked and kicked back, or something we can work on, because we need to move.
So how about this? Is everybody okay if we just, in the last 5 minutes, if we, 3 minutes, can we just zoom through and just throw something on the wall and just get everybody's reaction? Size of the ADU, 750 max? 1,000?
I vote 1,000.
1,000, I'll second 1,000.
You're a bit higher.
I'm 15, but
I'm
I
fine
think
with a bit higher.
all that we talked about, it's still going to limit itself regardless. And from the outside, you can't see a difference. And we're never going to make it through this in 3 minutes.
I have a quick question too. I'm sorry to even make it worse, but the setback is 10 or 20 feet, whatever. Is that only from the street?
No, it's on the side.
Side.
So the
Side.
current setback is 10.
So it could be as close as 20 feet to my fence.
No, it could be 10 feet away.
10 feet.
So that's the law today. Our current code.
Even 20. I know. Yeah, I got you. It's 10, but I wasn't sure if that applied to all sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Trent was your next door neighbor, he could put a 35-foot high,
Yeah.
6,000 square foot or whatever the size is barn,
10 feet from my fence.
10 feet from your fence.
Yeah,
And I've done that.
I've seen that in my neighborhood.
So to propose what you're doing, simple for me would be take our existing AD, remove the policy for that it's detached, do something about the maximum square footage, and
Setback.
Percentage on the acreage.
this, well, but I think that's already
That
addressed
exists.
in the actual accessory dwelling, and throw that out and throw it up to them and let them work on it. I have a very difficult time of sending something up that's, unless they know, it's a 50-50. It's 50% done what we're sending them. It's not 100% done. So we're sending a concept for them to review and to comment and send back. We're not saying, here it is, approve it or not.
Would there be a public hearing to this
Yes.
if we put
Yes.
something? So I think
There-
it'd be good to, I'd like to hear what the public says about the 1,000, 1,500 thing. My only pushback on the 1,500, that's a house. You can go
Yeah,
buy
make
a
another
fence.
house.
You can go buy.
They're both houses.
If you want to go big, Trent,
I did just
attached.
move my grandmother into a tiny,
her friend
tiny
did.
But it
little
looks
apartment.
horrible.
And they have to lose everything they own to squish it in there. So it's like a lifetime worth of stuff. So you guys aren't old yet. But when you're old, you don't get to take anything with you because someone wants to shove you in something little.
I'm old. My
Time.
mother's older. I just moved her from a big house to basically a room. She's fine. She doesn't care anymore. I'm 70. I don't care anymore. You know, there's a lot of, I want to keep my possessions. That's when you give them away. That's when you say, okay, kids, you wanted this, give them away, you don't have to wait till you die.
Okay.
There's a lot of,
Thank you. So time's up. How about this? Here's a suggestion from the Peanut Gallery. I will create a proposal according to, the standard city template, and then circulate it based on the feedback that we have now.
Via email. Yeah.
Yeah, and then on is it the 13th? I can't remember. Is it, we meet sometime in December, don't we?
Is it the 10th? Oh.
It's early in the month.
I think
And
it's
then
the 12th, isn't it, Jay?
That's the 12th.
12th, okay. And then we'll see how we go.
I concur.
Thanks, everybody. You guys are awesome.
As long as we don't meet as a majority to discuss it, right?
Yeah.
That's correct. You can meet 3 of you at a time or by email talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm just putting the 10th.
From a timeline standpoint, I mean, that we do have a shorter turnaround time because we're so late in the month. So from a packet standpoint, sorry, just pulling up the calendar real quick.
It's got to be.
Oh, Rob,
done.
you really need something.
Do you want to have your public hearing on it on the 13th?
Yes, please. So we
Okay.
need 10 days at least.
Yes.
We can notice that now. You don't have to have the draft code at that point, but we probably need the
put it-
proposal by the 5th from the Planning Commission.
I'll try and send it by the end of this week, if that's
Okay.
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 We'll all be looking for an email.
Now, does this check the box that we are moving towards lower end housing so that we can show that we are making an effort?
You'd actually be
most
jumping
communities,
some
yes, but
boxes.
not in Highland.
Oh, sorry.
What?
In most communities, yes, but not in Highland. It'll still be sold for over $1 million, right? Just joking.
But yes, for the moderate income housing plan, you'd actually be jumping some boxes because I think our first step was to do a survey of residents to see what they thought before we considered some ordinance changes. So back to it takes a long time sometimes for us to do things as a city. So you'd be jumping some boxes, but this is one of our goals.
No, we did get a notice from the state that we are one of the fewer cities that are fully in compliance with the moderate income housing plan from the state.
Nice.
So
That's good.
Thank
to hear.
good job, Planning Commission. All that work that you put through, putting those general plan amendments together, worked.
Okay. Good.
But Claude, just to finish your question, that's not why we're doing this. It's just
Oh.
it's just a nice extra benefit. I think it really is something that's needed.
Well, I agree. Just didn't want to have to put them all in one place.
This also,
This is a
yeah.
better solution, I think.
And this solves a lot of our no housing for senior residents issue that we kind of suffer from in Highland too. So, okay, so are we switching over to our meeting?
We are.
All right. All right.
You can do a call to order, but maybe not the invocation and pledge since we already
All right,
did
I'd
that.
like to welcome you to the Highland Planning Commission meeting for November 28th. Whoops. Trent, are you willing to pray? Yeah? Okay.
You didn't do a good enough job.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this beautiful day. We pray that Thy will be in our attendance as we discuss the matters of the city business. We pray for Thy enlightenment and care that we will make wise choices and look out for our fellow citizens. Grateful for this day, and this we say in Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any unscheduled public appearances? No? Okay. All right. Then we are going to go to the approval of the meeting minutes on August 29th.
May I make a motion?
You may.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the 29th of August, 2023.
There's 2 items. There's the
And
calendar
the
for
planning
next year.
commission meeting.
Thank you, Jay. And the planning commission schedule for 2024.
With the dates as follows, yeah. I second it. Okay. Can we have a vote on both those items?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you. And then communication items from the staff for development code changes.
So, Planning Commission, we've been talking for a while in kind of more vague terms about the big changes that the state has required all cities to adopt, and we're putting them into play now. We wanted to get a little bit of feedback from you. Somehow I didn't realize that we're already going to be at the 13th for having you actually consider these changes, because the city has to have them in place beginning February because we're a bigger city. So this is the big overhaul to the subdivision process. I have slides. We'll see what I wrote on them because I have forgotten. High-level discussion, timeline. So this is our high-level discussion with the Planning Commission. We're going to ask for your review and recommendation on next meeting because the council has one meeting after that, which is January 16th, so that hopefully they will adopt it, and then we will be compliant with state law on February 1st.
Rob, so you just said that we were meeting on December 12th, right? Is that correct?
I might have put the wrong date on there. It's the 12th. It's
Okay, I was
13th
just
is a
checking.
Wednesday. So, what are the changes? The big one is the council is out of the subdivision game. No city council member and the body as a whole cannot review or approve subdivision plats. That job falls to you primarily. So we'll have, there's a review, who reviews it and how we review it both changed. Where before we kind of have a more loose process, we now have what we've been calling the shot clock. An application comes in, the city has specific deadlines to turn it around, give comments back. The applicant then has deadlines to turn it around back to the city, and that's a review cycle. And we do that 4 times, and at the end of the 4th one, either the application is perfect or it's not, but either way it gets a decision up or down. It forces both the city and the developers to kind of be on their game a bit more, with the hope that our codes are clear and that we can get to a good resolution faster for everyone, that we get a decision, this isn't going to work, or it's fine, and it goes ahead. So,
Can I ask a question, Rob?
absolutely.
Would this include zoning changes, or is this purely in existing compliance with existing zoning?
The latter. The
Thank
purely,
you.
someone has an R140 lot that's 5 acres, they want to subdivide it into 4 lots, perfect. We have a review cycle. If they want to do a zoning change, they want to go from R140 to R120, it's still the normal process where it comes to you for recommendation and council decides. If they want to do a PD type thing, or if they want to change a code to allow something that's not already allowed, again, recommendation, council, none of that changes. This is just, I own land, it's under a zone, I already know what I can do with it, I just want to build it. So the hope is, where something already meets code, it should be easy enough to process. So again, the approval body, we have, before it was all council with you looking at it first, now it is council not involved at all. Maybe the council will show up, but if they do, they're speaking purely as residents of Highland City. They are not speaking as council members. They cannot decide anything. The preliminary plat will be coming to the Planning Commission. That's what state law says may. We're just going to say you reviewed the preliminary plat, and state law says we can have up to 1 hearing. So our plan was we'll still leave the hearing, preliminary plat for you. So this is, staff does a whole review cycle beforehand. Once we reach the 4th or the final one, because it got good before, then we say, okay, we're now kicking over to Planning Commission for review and approval or denial, depending on how it goes. The final plat does not go before a public body or any current existing public body. It must be approved by what they call an administrative land use authority, and they say cannot be the Planning Commission, cannot be the council. what we had talked with the council, and this is what we want to get your feedback on. We were going to create the, what do we call it? The Development Oversight Review Committee. Our thought was that will be a staff and planning commission mix. We will have 3 staff members, and the thought, this is, council liked this thought, and we wanted to get your feedback, so please chime in. We'd have a couple of planning commission members, not enough for a quorum, but people who are there so they know the preliminary plat, and they're part of this committee to review the final plat and give out an approval or denial. It imposes a little bit more work on who those 2 people are. We were thinking maybe the chair or a designee, but somehow we come with 2. Our plan is we're going to have essentially a weekly meeting and of this new body. And because sometimes with applicants, it's always that struggle of like, oh, can we get it on for the next agenda? That's in like 3 weeks. Our thought is we're just say we have a weekly Thursday meeting. If it's ready by Monday, we put out notices by, go through a process so that by the end of the week you're good. And if you miss it, it's fine. You're just on the next week's schedule. So we're going to do a weekly short meeting. And this is going to require more work, again, from the Planning Commission. We're still working on schedules and policies and all of that. The kind of thought is we'll try to have a Thursday meeting, maybe around lunch if that works for people, or some other time. Maybe it's in the afternoon. We don't know. We're trying to figure out how to make this work.
So why do you want us on that committee if we've already agreed to a preliminary plat as a group? Because there's not a lot of change between preliminary and final, is there?
There are not.
So why are you wanting us there? Like something might change, or?
No, I think it's 2 reasons. One, it's so that the final decision is not purely staff. If staff is rejecting it, the blame gets shared.
Okay, I see where this is going.
The second reason, the council thought it would be good to have someone who is a kind of one of the non-staff members of the city, who also was involved in the review of the preliminary to make sure, yep, this final does look like what we looked at before. We're still fine with it. That was the thought.
So one more question, because we've had a few of these come through. By right, they can do R140, and by right, they only need 2 points of access, but there are 3 options.
Yes.
And there's a lot of public cry about what options are used. The council's out of that now, and we decide what the road connection should be. Should it go straight? Should it turn?
Correct. Staff would obviously have our recommendations
Right.
on the front end. Magnolia State's a great one. They had 3 potential points of access. Staff thought we could make 2 work.
Well, they're only required for 2.
And they're only required to do 2. We really couldn't require a third unless we're going to pay them a bunch of money.
Right.
So ultimately, it could be, and this might be from preliminary plat, staff recommends something, the developer doesn't recommend, says, I want to do these other 2 connections. You would decide.
Okay.
It would come to you as part of the preliminary plat, and then you'd say, all right, let's draft the final based on what they approved.
And are we forbidden to talk to council about stuff like that?
No.
Okay.
But they're not making a decision. So
I know they're not.
They're like a resident. You can talk to any resident in Highland about anything going on in the city, get their input.
Okay.
And
I just didn't know if there was a
council,
restriction.
honestly, they may show up to the public hearings and talk, but you take their feedback like you would anyone else from the city coming to talk at you about a plat.
So I have a practical question because, as you know, I'm playing being a developer.
Yes.
So here was my experience: 14 acres, 14 lots, and city staff said, "Wait, actually, even though a normal subdivision has a 56-foot road, we want to compel you to do a 66-foot road." And then we had that big storm in a teacup when I got all the residents with pitchforks and that to show up saying, "No, please don't do that through road." That was planned from
Yes.
11200. So I'm not being cute about this, just genuinely. How would that work? Because that widened road concept didn't actually come to Planning Commission. It was just staff said, okay, let's try this at City Council. And so how does that, I guess thinking through this process, staff would have to ensure that whatever, you can't move the goalposts between the decision by the Planning Commission and the decision by the LUA.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other reasons to have couple of planning commission representatives to be that continuity between the two. But that's to use your subdivision as an example. So it's a great example of some of the limitations of this. So as you know, general plan said put a bigger road in there. Maybe that doesn't actually make sense for how everything else around it works because of the other connections, how the through road will or will not really ever work. Staff looking at that would still say, do the wider road because our general plan calls it, and we as staff can't vary it. So we would still be stuck. Ultimately, though, the planning commission would be the body saying, you get to make the decision like the council did of, this is what it is in the preliminary plat stage, and then staff would then carry it forward, and ideally it would follow through on the final plat without any surprises for anyone.
Yeah, what I mean, I think thank you, Rob. As I'm thinking through this, the point that is crystallizing for me is, to what extent do city staff have the liberty to change the proposal between planning commission approval and this newly formed land use authority's final approval?
Not much. It'd only be if, for some reason, as part of it, in some regard, part of this new shot clock cycle process, the city actually ends up waiving certain conditions if they don't make it part of the comments going back to the developer. It's supposed to stop something along the lines of what you're talking about. It went through 3 cycles, and on the 4th one, the city says, oh, wait, we need you to do this. It actually says in state law, if you failed to catch it early enough on, and they resubmitted their application based on your comments, you have waived your right to require that, unless it's a health or safety type thing. If it's a fire access thing, you still require it. But if it's a preference type thing, or that lot should have been maybe a couple of feet to the west, it is too late.
Yeah, what I mean, I'll use a specific example. Like, between planning commission and city council, we also had this curveball of, hey, we'd like to add a 10-foot trail. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, where did that come from?
It shouldn't ever come. I mean, the answer is no. It can't. It shouldn't. I mean, someone could come up, but there's no more public hearings after that point. The planning commission made a decision, and staff should just be then saying, all right, developer, you got your preliminary plat approval. Give us the final with the additional civil drawings and all of that. I'm sure at some point staff will make some recommendation that wasn't part of it, and ideally they shouldn't. And the developer would be to say, that wasn't part of my preliminary plat approval.
Yeah, and in fairness to the staff that were involved in this, they were referring to a general plan that was actually changed by the council, but because of staffing problems and that, it wasn't changed. So it's a 10-year-old, everybody's new. We have staff turnover, we have new council, we have new planning commission members. So the thing that we all revert to is, we've got these city documents, but as we went through the minutes, we were like, oh, oopsie, we changed the map, and that really shouldn't be the case. But by the way, that hasn't been changed, So how do you deal with that if you're a developer? And I'm not, but
it's honestly going to be on a case-by-case thing. What I would say is kind of how state law works is you're supposed to interpret requirements in favor of the application, where if it doesn't really say no, you should allow it. So say there was a new standard we had 2 conflicting ones, we were looking at one, and there's actually a second one. What probably should happen is, well, which one is the more lenient one? Is the one we were looking at? Or is it the current one that actually is the more lenient one that really should be applied? In that case, I would say we'd go with the newer one because it's what actually applies and it's better for the developer. But if the developer spent 4 cycles and got a preliminary plat approval that said, do this exact shape of road, it should be done at that point. Obviously, we're going to handle weird situations with every development because they come up, but that is supposedly the process. So we have 4 cycles of staff, preliminary, 4 cycles of staff. It's always up to. Ideally, we can do it sooner, but up to 4. Final for this new land use authority. Any thoughts on having a couple of planning commission members participate? I know Commissioner Abbott.
I think it's a great idea.
Like it?
Well, does it have to be the same 2?
It doesn't. We were just thinking of saying the
Just
chair and someone
rotate.
else, but we could also just say, and 2 planning commission members, and then have you decide
It
who-
will,
Well, I
who's
would
there,
say,
who's
I would say
available.
that because.
it will
like-
be during the workday, so it would be depending upon who is available to,
Yeah, I would
it
just say
won't be an after-hours meeting,
We could just
so.
write it as 2 planning commission members and leave it general for how we.
Would you
split
say
that.
2 planning commission members that were at the preliminary plat meeting?
I kind of like that thought just
Yeah.
for that continuity.
Say that again?
So it can be 2 planning commissioners, but those 2 have to have been at the meeting where the preliminary plat.
They have to
was-
follow that
Well, 'cause
particular
they'll have the
subdivision.
history
Yeah.
and-
They're the ones who have the history and
Absolutely.
connection to it.
And you were saying something when you emailed me about, or maybe Jay was, of that this could even be a Zoom meeting.
Yes, our thought is to make this as simple and as streamlined and as short of a meeting as possible. So we have 2 planning commission members who say, can you make it for a lunch break? We'll have a 15-minute Zoom call, and then you pop on. If we have anything, and if not, it gets canceled for that week. If it's, here's the final plat, you've reviewed it several times, we're going to try to even shorten it because we only have sometimes fairly lengthy staff reports. Because it's more of an internal thing, staff is the one reviewing it. We know our own report. So it might be, here's a few outstanding recommendations for conditions. Here's why we want these. And then it might be, here's a dispute. We think the standard is X. The developer thinks the standard should be Y. We have to make a decision on that either way. But we'll try to highlight that and say, all right, let's approve it or approve with conditions or deny. And then we will be responsible for writing up the decision that says, here's your letter of approval. You can take it to the bank and go get your funding. Or here's your denial. Here's the reasons why.
And this works if we have 2 of us that follow that subdivision all the way.
That it'll be noticed. It'll be a public body, but we don't anticipate people really showing up for it.
But what I was going back to is that those 2 members of planning commission have to have been part of the process. That puts the burden on staff to approve that. And does that mean if I wasn't part of that and I was in the meeting, now I've just voided whatever decision you've made? If you write it in there, are we going to put ourselves in a bad situation?
My thought is if we're going to put it in there, it would be this upcoming meeting. We have the Jameson plat coming in for approval. Commissioners X, Y, and Z were part of that. Would any of you be available for this meeting? And get 2 people to say yes, here's the time, here's the Zoom link, pop on. Because we'll have the minutes from the planning or the preliminary plat approval from the planning commission. We can know, planning commissioners, these were here, and we send it out and ask who will be available for it.
I guess to Trent's thing, if you couldn't get 2 and the second one wasn't at the meeting, it'd be okay if he showed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
But like,
maybe
on your guys' side, when you send out the notice, I would probably pick people who have been there. But if you have to resort to somebody who wasn't there, we don't want to say it can't be done.
I just
so. Should we
recommend
just
we
write it
don't
as
put
2
it
planning
in the
commission
ordinance.
members, but as a practice, try to get people who were
Yes.
Agreed.
okay.
dare say you're gonna have a hard time catching two of us on a weekly basis. We struggle to be here on a monthly basis.
And then the staff members, I was going to say that part of that approval body would be me, Jay, and Andy was what our thoughts were. Community development director, the legal side, and then the engineering public works side. Gives kind of a breadth of the issues we care about.
Okay.
The other changes we were going to consider, so currently we have a minor subdivision process, which is kind of a streamlined, you do preliminary and final plat together. It's currently allowed for up to 3 lots on parcels that already have basically all the improvements, already on a road, already has utilities. Our thought is, so the way state law says, if you do a minor subdivision where you combine it all, you skip the planning commission preliminary plat approval. It goes straight to final with this other approval body. If you're going to combine it. Our thought was, if we're going to combine it and skip kind of the public step, we'd want to really narrow the scope of what a minor subdivision really is, because we don't want to avoid the public on it. Our thought is, maybe if we just make it a lot split, a simple, it goes from a 2-acre lot to 1-acre lot. You already have all the roads and sidewalks in front of you. It's as simple as, that's it. You're doing 3 lots, sorry, you're gonna have to come do preliminary and more, but you wanna split a lot, we're fine with it. So we thought we were kind of making minor subdivisions much smaller. If that's like that. And the final thought, I was going through the code, we still have an open space subdivision process in there. I just wanted to tweak the code and make it more of, this is code that exists for reference for the existing open space subdivisions. It cannot be used for any future. It's kind of been removed, but it's not quite clear. So I just want to make it clear. You can't use this. This is for basically information for residents and staff who deal with open space. So understand how it works, but don't look at this for any kind of subdivision in the future. So those were our thoughts. Do I have another slide? No. So that is the plan. Any other thoughts or concerns or questions about what we're going to be doing?
When does this start?
It'll be in effect, if all goes to plan, February 1st. So I'm going to, part of the notice with your ADUs, we're going to have a notice for this, and I'm going to be drafting a bunch of code in the next week to put together. I'll try to get it as early as I can. We've had a lot of internal work going on how we're going to update a lot of things, so it's gone kind of pushed back, but ideally next week you'll see what we're proposing to change.
Very cool.
Thank you.
All right. And we did approve the dates for next year, so we have access to that in your notes. Planning Commission and staff communication
Those are,
items is
that's not been
done.
updated. I do have one communication item. So we have received 3 proposals from qualified firms to provide services in helping us to update our general plan. And so what we need is some help from at least 2 planning commission members to sit on an ad hoc committee to review the proposals and evaluate the proposals that have come in.
When and how often is that?
With only 3, it would probably be a couple of hours one day here, either if we can schedule it earlier part of December, otherwise the earlier part of January.
I'm available. I am too.
Okay, you've got 2.
That's right up my alley.
You want 3? I can do that.
Okay, yeah, we can do 3. More the merrier.
Oh, good.
Okay, Claude would like to do that.
Standard 4.
Request for
And that's all I had for communication items.
Can I make a motion?
You may.
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
Let's vote on it.
Third.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, that passes. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.